Welcome everyone to today's OD6 Metals Investor Briefing webinar. It's a pleasure to have you with us. My name is Lucas Robinson from Investor Relations Consultancy Corporate Storytime. OD6 is a listed company pursuing exploration and development opportunities in the critical minerals space. I'm pleased to welcome Managing Director Brett Hazelden and Geological Advisor Dr. Darren Holden to provide an update on a series of recent company announcements concerning the Quinn Fluorspar project in Nevada, USA. Today's session will provide an update on the company's ongoing due diligence process for the Quinn Fluorspar project, which is nearing completion, alongside recent exploration success and next steps, including OD6's broader critical mineral strategy and the emerging strategic importance of domestic US fluorspar supply amid growing demand across advanced manufacturing technologies and defence applications. After the presentation, the presenters will be pleased to take any questions during the Q&A session. If you are joining us live, you are welcome to submit your questions at any time during the webinar via the Q&A function on your screen. If we are unable to address your question, we'll follow up with a response after the webinar. So without any further ado, I'm delighted to hand over to Brett and Darren to present.
Thanks, Lucas. Thanks everyone for joining, and hopefully a good update here. All the normal important information there. Let's start at the corporate snapshot. So the presentation's available online. It did come out this morning, along with a metallurgy announcement that we were trying to get out yesterday, but the ASX wanted us to tick a few more boxes before it got out this morning. So that's a good announcement, and people should be having a close look at that. So where we're sitting at the moment, 15 cents. The market has been down for the last 7 weeks, so I reckon we should be well and truly in the 20s at the moment. But we just see a few option holders continuing to sell, and a couple of people come in from a day trader point of view that take up a big position and then suddenly sell down either the next day or something else. So we're trying to obviously work with that. But what I will point to you guys is the volume right at the bottom here of the screen there, bottom left-hand corner. The volume is really up. So since the 4th of March, since we announced the Fluorspar option, so 2.5 months ago, our average volume has been around 12 million shares, and the average value of that volume is about $1.6 million. So we've got lots of volume going through. We're able to obviously get people in and out fairly quickly. It can be obviously a double-edged sword, but it is a good thing for the company and obviously investors going forward as well. So I'm really happy with that, and I just hope to see that share price get up to the 25-cent mark and above, based on all the good news that we keep on putting out, and a lot more to come. Let's pause on the due diligence status at the moment. So everything is going as planned. It is a compelling undeveloped fluorspar opportunity in the US, around Nevada. We're approaching that decision to exercise it. We need to exercise it either before the 24th of June, or we can extend that out to about the 23rd of August. I'm not seeing any reasons at the moment to extend it out. As you can see on this tick box list, plenty of good things. We're obviously going to go ahead with it. It's more a timing issue for us, and there's no renegotiations or anything else happening on the deals, so everything is moving forward. So let's just go through a couple of these tick points. So we have been out there. Darren's been out there a couple of times now. He's going back out there again later this month, or next month, I should say. We've confirmed the grades. We've done it with channel samples, so not just grab samples. They are channel samples across large 1 to 12 meter faces. So we can see the grade is consistent there, and it's not a geological special. We've identified that target corridor of 8 kilometers. And the interesting thing with that 8-kilometer target corridor, we think there might be a bigger area out there as well that we want to look at going forward. So a little bit of work in the background that we're continuing to do. What's been a bit of a great find for us is the Union Carbide work. So we'll touch on some of those details as we get into there. But some really great drill results, again, confirming the exceptional grades at Horseshoe. The announcement that we put out today from a metallurgical point of view, we've been able to hit the historic test work has been able to hit acid spar levels and also met spar as well. And there's also that potential for an early project there at Horseshoe of virtually direct shipping ore, crush screen, and then sell it all off. We have expanded the project scale from the original deal, and we'll continue to look at that area as we move forward. We continue to see the United States as obviously importing 400,000 tonnes per annum, so the target market is confirmed. Generally, most projects around the world are about 100 to 150,000 tonnes per annum, so the target market for us would be seeing us not take up too much of the US market at all. From a technical, legal, permitting, and all those point of views, they're all ticks on the boxes so far. There's been no concerns at the moment. With Darren being back from the field from his recent trip, we're now busily prioritising some drill targets. There's still some drill assays outstanding from some of that work that we're just waiting to see, but that work is continuing, and then that will allow us to I'll get on with the permitting arrangements. We have already started all the baseline environmental studies out there, the flora, fauna, and archaeological works. So that's ticking the box. And as I mentioned, permitting strategy. We've got a permitting strategy. We've already spoken to Fast 41 as an introductory. Things are happening. The project's moving forward in the right direction. So we haven't found any red flags. The project looks good. Plenty of work, obviously, to get on with, and we'll continue those announcements coming out. Sorry, just one last one I'll also put on that slide as well. So location, we'll come back up to location, but I'll just point out the US Hawthorne Strategic Mineral Reserve base there. So we're the closest Fluorspar project, and really the only Fluorspar project within that region that can get to that very, very quickly. So that's also the largest ammo dump in the US. Probably a mental note as well, we continue having people approach us about Fluorspar projects in the US. We continue to look at them, and anything that we think might be interesting, we'll continue to deep dive on it. But at the moment, we haven't seen anything as good as what we've seen today. Let's look at critical minerals and supply risk here. So we already know it's a critical mineral in the US, also Japan, Canada, Australia, and other people around the world. The commonality here is China makes up over 60% of the supply. They were a net exporter, now they're a net importer, a lot of it coming from Mongolia. And then you can see obviously Mexico being the other main supplier to the world. There's South Africa, Vietnam, and others as well. So it's been a critical mineral since Donald Trump put it in his first term. So it wasn't a recent addition. It's had bipartisan support for a long time. So we continue to see it that way. We're trying to strategically position the company and obviously the project to be able to access a lot of the US funding that's available. So federal and state loan programs, offtake backing. You can see Aries, the ARS at the Canadian Stock Exchange. They've got a project down in Utah, managed to secure a $250 million offtaker agreement with the US Department of Defense because they were the only ones there. The mine hasn't started yet. They're looking at about 20,000 tonnes per annum to start with, potentially expanding to 50,000 tonnes. Project Vault, there's lots of things happening with Project Vault at the moment around the world. And as I mentioned, Fast 41 before, it is an accelerated permitting pathway. As I mentioned, Julie Bishop's been able to get us into and have a talk to the Deputy Secretary of that whole arrangement. So we've already had that discussion. Once we obviously have our drill holes and permitting pathway identified, we'll be back talking to those guys straight away. I will also mention we're doing a bit of work around at the moment in the background of identifying grants and a whole heap of other things in the US that are available. We've identified lots and lots of them depending on what stage you are in the development process. So we'll be looking to access some of those grants and some of those programs going forward. Essential uses comes up on the next slide, but fairly all future-facing products, along with refrigerants and steel and aluminium production as well. Big deficit forecast going forward. And if we just dive deep, and I won't go into too much detail here because a lot of people have seen this before, but for those that are joining us for the first time, AI semiconductors, fluorines used in the semiconductors as fluorinated gases and also for plasma etching. There's a link there. Really click on that link. The Japanese and also the South Koreans are low on tungsten hexafluoride, which puts a film over the semiconductors as well. So the other thing in the US, the US CHIPS Act is investing over $50 billion there. So there's going to be an expansion, obviously, of chips production in the US and then more demand that will drive that. Batteries, similar story in the US. There's more domestic build out happening for more battery facilities. But interesting enough, if you look at a lithium ion battery, the chemistry is LiPF6. And when you actually put it on a side by weight, that battery is 75% fluorine by weight, excluding all the packaging and everything else. So it's got a big use and will be continuing to drive demand going forward as well. Nuclear power, I won't go into it too much detail, but there is a link down the bottom saying Google, Microsoft, and others are looking at restarting a lot of nuclear plants or building them really for consistent AI data center power going forward. And to get a uranium nuclear fuel rod, you need to take the yellow cake from Olympic Dam and then convert it into uranium hexafluoride and then into a nuclear fuel rod. So again, you really need uranium here to have a reactor going. Defense, plenty of defense applications there. I'm not going to go through it. Everyone has a defense slide nowadays, but plenty of uses for fluorine going forward. We do point to TVN as a case study. They had a really good run up to $1 billion. They've pulled back to about 650 million market cap at the moment. So their project is sitting at 43 million tonnes at 8% CAF2. The Speewah project's been around for a fair while now, but obviously they've had some really good success bringing in Sumitomo and JOGMEC in that joint venture. So obviously the market cap is reflective of a 77.5% joint venture, plus the other assets they've got as well. I think importantly, the CapEx gives you a bit of a guide on what they're doing. 150,000 tonnes per annum Fluorspar project, lower grade than our grades, which are looking anywhere between 30 and 70%. So our CapEx should be lower by having smaller footprints, smaller plants, and smaller stripping ratios. Should be considerably lower. So that's for an acid spar project. If you're at a matte spar project, it's really a mobile crushing and screening facility, and then potentially a tomera, and I'll touch on what a tomera is a bit later, but it's an optical sorter. So we can touch on those. And just from an operating cost point of view, generally around the world, the data that we've got from Project Blue and others is between $100 to $200 US a tonne is the operating cost that 80% of the world's production comes out at. So that gives you a bit of a guide of where we'll be looking for if you're trying to plug in some numbers into a financial model. Let's get into some location access and into geology. So location is north of Las Vegas there, so 220 k's north of Las Vegas. We've obviously got the West Coast, San Francisco, and everyone else on the other side. So good location to be in. Nevada's obviously one of the #1 mining jurisdictions in the world. Access to sealed roads within a short distance from us. The roads all the way to the bottom of the tenement areas or the claim areas. Wide graded county roads like you'd see in Western Australia and all other places. So access is really, really good and really good to get around to the rest of the US. So I'll hand over to Darren, and Darren can go through the geology, and then we'll jump back into a few other things after that.
Thanks, Brett. Fluorspar, also known as fluorite, is a really, really simple mineral. Its formula is CaF2, so calcium fluoride. It's about 48%, just under 49% of fluoride by weight. It forms in epithermal environments. You get a heat source and intrusion that's bringing in fluorine from the magma chamber. These hot acidic acids rise. It hits the limestone. The calcium carbonate strips out and replaces it with fluorspar and a carbonate ion. So it's really straightforward, but all of the different deposit shapes and styles here, replacement, veins, breccia pipes, are all represented on our project. And plus we have the lithocap on top. So the local geology, we're in Ordovician limestones that would then hit with a tertiary intrusive phase to form a large epithermal system through there. So we've got 3 targets now identified that show scale potential to drill and to achieve a mineral resource estimate on there. That's Horseshoe, Mammoth, and Big Jim. There's a bunch of other occurrences around the area that we're still doing work on to see whether or not we can bring them up to a stage that they also warrant drilling. So go to the next one. So the Horseshoe deposit is a replacement style following a bed in the limestone. There's about 26,000 tonnes that were taken out of a shallow open pit several decades ago. We've been in and we've channel sampled a few samples in that pit and we've had some really impressive numbers. 12 meters, that's just on 69% CaF2, 7 meters, 73.1, up to 82%. So very impressive grades, consistent with some of the historic grades on there. And then in the Union Carbide database that we recently acquired, there was a little bit of drilling. It was drilled before the open pit was in place, so the high-grade core in the center of the pit actually wasn't known to Union Carbide at the time. But that drilling also produced some quite impressive sections. They didn't assay all of the drill core. Some was kept back for METs. Some they may have thought was slightly lower grade, but nevertheless, and they've still got really impressive grades in there. And then the bottom of the hole's not assayed as it goes into a fluorspar breccia. And these fluorspar breccias, we don't know the grade of them yet. Elsewhere, where we've seen them on the project, they've sort of been, 30 to 60% themselves. So it's fluorspar mixed in with a bit of limestone. So we think we can actually get this to be a considerably thicker system going forward. There's a long section. You can see that the drilling was just done over on one little side, the historic drilling. There's the numbers: 25 meters at 46.2%, 14 at 70.9. Bear in mind that groups like Tivana are looking at developing projects on the 8 to 12% range. Many mines around the world operate in this sort of 10 to 20% range. We're seeing genuine wide mineable intersections, potentially mineable intersections, and this order of like 40 to 70 or 80% on here. So this is forming into what could be a really, really special project with both grade and scale potential. Continues or plunge. The Mammoth deposit is a larger footprint. It's about 9,000 square meters mapped at surface. There's assay results up to 80%. There is a footwall breccia there as well, where we've had numbers up to sort of 32%. And that channel sampling in the pit is showing around about 40 to 45% overall grade. You see it outcropping in that photograph there is a big white body of fluorspar. We've since been back and we've channel sampled. I think we collected another 150 samples all through the Mammoth outcrops, and they're in the lab at the moment, pending assay. And that should help us build a better idea of grade on that. The ore body does plunge to the north and heads under a limestone cap. You can see the vendor there, Don McDowell, in the brown pants and the black shirt. In the front for scale, so it's about 3-4 meter outcrop at that end, but that's plunging into the hill. So we're looking at drill permitting to drill through that hill to extend that ore body through there also. And then our rediscoveries, we've called it a Big Jim. So Big Jim sat on a number of old US Geological Survey maps and local maps in about 3 or 4 different locations, right? And so we had to kind of hike around and try and find where this was, and it was really clear when we found it. It was this beautiful, massive purple fluorspar vein, about 2 meters thick of, almost pure fluorspar. It's reported historic assays of up to 98.6%. So, that's bonanza. That is absolutely bonanza type grades. There's a footwall breccia that the lower contact isn't exposed, so we don't really know how thick that is. That's referred to as gang, i.e. it was of no interest to the historic miners that put in little tunnels into this. But that's still recorded with 60% CAF2, and looking at the breccia versus the white fluorspar, that's quite easy to do that. It is sitting parallel with bedding. It's kind of a vein, but it's also a replacement body. Nice, beautiful purple fluorspar shown there. It is dipping into the hill. We have the rocket lode above it, and we have a reported third lode that we don't know much about reporting the historic workings. But the idea being is we get up that hill and drill through the lithocap on top and some other spots and drill through those potentially multiple lodes. There's a big jasperoid body sitting atop it, acting as an aquitard. The Jumbo to Horseshoe corridor is a zone of intense alteration. It's been mapped out from airborne hyperspectral systems and satellite NMAP data. And we think the structures at Horseshoe run north, northeast, south, southwest, and they're lining up with this stack of alteration runs through there all the way through to essentially the lithocap and then onto Big Jim. The lithocap is a silica-rich body which is capping. It's basically a historic hot spring type environment, and it's capping over the top of a number of occurrences. And we're thinking once we drill through that lithocap, we're also going to start to see fluorspar in there. So we're not looking at this as these relatively small historic pits or things like that. We're looking at this as a whole system that's linking through there. And what's next? And then regionally, an area that's called the dress circle. It's got a huge amount of phyllic alteration. That's an epithermal kind of alteration. It's indicated by green in this satellite imagery through there. It looks like there's potentially an intrusion at depth underneath that, given the circular feature that is existing there. But that's basically been unprospected. And then the spar mine is something we're investigating as well. It's got some channel sampling up to 78% on that. And then, targeting, as I mentioned earlier, beneath that silica lithocap and the cliffs and the areas beneath it where we get lots of epithermal alteration.
All right, historical metallurgical work. So it managed to get through the ASX system today. It was meant to come out yesterday, but the tick boxes are there and all the various disclaimers that you can see on the bottom right-hand corner that we've had to include. So interesting enough, what it allows us to do, it allows us to report at one time, and then we can't actually refer to it many other times going forward. So there's some good work in here. The Union Carbide and the Gallagher company that did test work for Union Carbide managed to get to a 97.83% CAF2 with a 70% recovery, or a little bit lower at 95% at 82.7% recovery. So really good results there. There's the full metallurgical reports at the back there of that announcement, so people can go and dive in and have a look. But really all they were some initial CITA tests. They were preliminary, they were unoptimized. Can you actually get it up to a acid spar grade? So interesting enough, they achieved met spar grades quite easily, but an acid spar grade was obviously what they were chasing for, which is what the usage was at the time. And on the right-hand side there, you can see acid spar grades are generally greater than 97% CAF2, with low impurities of things like arsenic and phos and a few other things. So we're still looking at what our grades are looking like in some of the bits and pieces, and with Darren's new samples that we've got out there, we haven't seen anything that would suggest that we've got any impurities of concern, which is a good sign for us. So more work to happen on that. At the moment, we've also, with Darren's crew that were out there, we've got 11 different metallurgical samples that the guys collected out there, both from the footwall, the hanging wall, and the main ore bodies themselves. So we'll be able to test more flotation works going forward. But what we're also looking at is test work of optical sorting in Germany. I did put a link in the ASX announcement to Tomra, and you'll see that Tomra has actually been used in Los Cuves, or Cuves, however you say it in Mexico. So they've actually got a machine in there which effectively removes waste from ore and upgrades it all. But what that also helps is it decreases size of the plant and everything else going forward, reagent consumption. It's a neat little bit of kit. And when you think about our tonnage and our grade, so if we're trying to produce 100,000 tonnes per annum, and we've got grades greater than 30% or even higher, and recoveries that we're seeing, obviously they're 70 to 80%. What we can see is we'd be producing, looking to treat about 300,000 tonnes of ore per annum to get that 100,000 tonnes of product. So we don't need a huge processing facility. That's about 1,000 tonnes a day of ore actually being treated to get the concentrated acid spar ore. We can obviously produce a met spar product that looks like an early stage project that we'll continue to investigate starting at Horseshoe and maybe even Big Jim, especially given those grades. So there's a couple of different processes there. There's probably an early start with a low capital and then an expansion to a bigger acid spar project as we obviously get to scale and grade. We've also got all those metallurgical samples ready to commence work. We're just finalising contracts with the vendors. And then part of the permitting process, we'll be looking to permit up to 1,000 tonnes of bulk permits that we can put through pilot scale testing and then be able to provide offtake samples to various people around America. So from a mining and processing point of view, this is fairly simple. It is sticking out the side of a hill, so some of them will be just mining the sides of the hills. Other ones might be going in like a Big Jim did historically in underground, but those are obviously very high grade systems as well. From a acid spar production point of view, it will be a crush, a grind or a mill, and then a flotation. And what we need to look at those flotation test work going forward is a lot of the test work that was done was, as I say, CITA test work, but the cleaning and the process to make sure we maximise grade and also recovery. And then obviously truck it off to various parts around America. So Mentioned earlier, we're very close to getting to a decision on the due diligence. We're really 8 months pregnant is probably the best way to put it. We've paid our $75,000 for a 120-day option, which is up to 25th of June. We can extend that, which we're not looking to at the moment, but if we have to, just based on waiting on paperwork or tick boxes to be ticked, then we will do so. But we don't see any reason not to get on with that. That will trigger a $200,000 payment. 50% of that will be in cash, and 50% of that will be going into shares. But that also goes to a notice of meeting and an EGM that will occur 6 weeks after we exercise it. So that's all in train, followed by drill permits, followed by commencement drilling, etc. The key one for us here, though, is let's just take a pause for a second on deferred milestones. So milestone one, really just confirming historic resources that were out there that we can't state in public because they're not JORC compliant, and grades greater than 30%, which is what we're seeing. So that's just the initial tick in the box. But where we've come from and where we've been looking at, and we've looked at multiple different assets around America and Canada and other places around the world as well for Fluorspar, is we don't think too many projects are really economic with less than 5 million tonnes in resource, grades less than 30%, and you need a metallurgical recovery of greater than that 75% for things to be economic. So we continue to look at other projects. We haven't found anything that really passes that sniff test, but we do think this project here does or has the potential to get there. Bankable studies and obviously then in construction. So we've been very clear to structure a project and not just take on a liability effectively. So if it doesn't stack up, it doesn't stack up, we move on. But all the tick boxes from the first couple of grades, they look fantastic. So go back to that due diligence first slide that I had up there, and everything is working through quite well. So there's Darren and the boys out in the field. This was in the Horseshoe Pit. So we've got on-field team now. So 3 geologists there and a field guy that's a really handy field guy as well. So those guys have done a fantastic job. We've got, as I mentioned, Darren and some of those guys heading back out there shortly, and plenty of work to get on with. We are waiting on some of those assays to come back from soil samples, from some of the channel samples. So there's still lots of good news flow to come. Still lots of assay results. Darren will be looking at what the soil geochemistry tells us as well. And hey, who knows? There might be more than just Fluorspar out there based on some of the things that the guys are seeing in the field as well. But Fluorspar is obviously our primary focus on this project. Drill targeting, permitting, and metallurgical test work planning. So permitting, I mentioned right at the start, we've already got the flora and fauna surveys happening in the seasonal window that they need to happen. So that's all started. That's all working very well. Once we've got the drill targets, which Darren's working on at the moment, we'll get those permitting requests in, and then there's 2 pathways on that, and we'll probably touch on it in more detail going forward on a couple of announcements, but there's a categoric exclusion that we'll apply for in parallel to a permit of operations. A permit of operations effectively is across the whole tenement area that we're doing the flora and fauna surveys. So those flora and fauna surveys are front-end loading, both permitting for exploration drilling, but also for mining going forward as well. So looking at how do we get into mining quickly. So that permit of operations is a longer process, but there is a shorter process, which is a categoric exclusion. The categoric exclusion allows us to effectively put in a mile worth of new tracks, and I talk in miles because that's how they work. It's obviously America. And also 5 acres of disturbance. So there's already existing roads all the way up there. I have spun up the Google Earth in the past. Have a look at those guys. There's plenty of existing roads all the way to this pit, which is what we've been able to access. So the permitting application will be to go in for a categoric exclusion in parallel with the permitting of operations. We'll hope to get that categoric exclusion permitted this year and drilling this year on those areas, and then follow-up drilling and expansion drilling next year based on the permit of operations. So that is all tracking along nicely at the moment. That's the end of it. So I'll hand back to Lucas. Lucas will no doubt have a whole heap of questions that people have got, and we'll go from there.
I have received a number of questions via email and pre-registrations. I'll also keep an eye out for any questions received during the webinar. So the first question is, given the grades returned so far at Horseshoe and Big Jim, Is the board actively assessing a direct shipping ore pathway as a first revenue option? And what minimum tonnage would you need to make that commercially viable?
So, good question. Yes, I've sort of indicated an early start project there for a direct shipping or a product there as a met spar product. So, in between that sort of 60 to 90% grades. If you can see that Aries starting at 20,000 tonnes on a very similar profile and then looking to ramp up from an acid spar to 50,000 tonnes. So, that sort of gives you an idea of where they think things might be economic. Yes, we're looking at it. Use around the world of met spar is about a quarter to a third of the total fluorspar demand goes into steel mills and aluminium refineries. So you'd look to produce somewhere between 40 to 100,000 tonnes, depending on how you would structure who you're going to sell it to. So do we want to keep the product into America, or do we want to send it to Japan, for example, one of the biggest producers of steel around the world and good quality steel? So there might be a good option for us going forward.
Okay. What's the likely timeline or commencement for a drill campaign at Quinn?
I did mention it right at the end there. So the permitting stuff hasn't gone in yet. From a categoric exclusion point of view, if we get through that process, we'll be looking to have a drill rig out there later this year. But from a permit of operations point of view, for a bigger campaign, off existing tracks and everything else, then that would be next year. But the existing campaign that we could do could be somewhere between, on the categoric exclusion, could be somewhere between 5,000 to 6,000 metres based on the targets that Darren's seen and is generating.
And in relation to US government support, do you think that the Quinn project could receive USA government support? And has anyone been in contact with the government?
Yep, so good question. So we have brought on Julie Bishop to do a lot of those roles there. We also are talking to people in the US with US accents, and that we might be able to put an OD6 badge on as well. We've already had a chat with Fast 41 from a permitting point of view, so that's already occurred. I know Julie knows the new ambassador quite well, and we've been able to have initial introductory discussions from Julie's point of view. I haven't done it personally myself, but we will continue to look to access the US government. I think importantly, now that we've got some of these historic results from the Union Carbide in terms of grade and metallurgical recoveries, we start being able to have more intelligent discussions rather than waving our arms saying, hey, we've got something really good here, come and talk to us and give us a whole heap of money. Now we can actually say, hey, there is historic resources, the grades look really good and they're consistent with what we're seeing, and the metallurgical results are also there as well. So that will allow us to open doors a little bit quicker and obviously get in there and have those discussions and try and get some of those grant programs. I did mention earlier as well that I have people looking at the various grant or Department of Energy, etc., money that is available from the US government. So we're looking at how do we position ourselves going forward, what work do we need to do, and what tick boxes do we need to clear when we put in those applications.
Thank you, Brett. I think we've got a series of questions that will probably be referred to Darren now. So the first being, historical reports reference a third high-grade lode, approximately 20 metres beneath Big Jim, that hasn't yet been observed in the field. What's the structural argument that it should be there? And given Big Jim's vein is open both north and south over more than 220 metres, what's your current best estimate of strike length and dip extent before drilling?
The Big Jim vein is sitting parallel with stratigraphy. So as long as that bed continues down dip, the ore body should continue in some form. How wide and where the feeders are and all those kind of things remain to be seen. There probably is a feeder structure in there, and that is feeding preferential beds in the stratigraphy. So the feeders come up and it's hit the Big Jim vein and spread out. Above the Big Jim vein, we've got the rocket lode, which we have seen in the field in a relatively small little pit that was being dug there. We've got samples pending on that. And then the reports of this third lode at depth are in historic reports There's a whole lot of mine spoil material running down the hill from Big Jim, so it probably covered over the outcrop of that, so we didn't see it. But it does make sense geologically because it's running parallel to the stratigraphy. Obviously, once we drill it, then we'll get a sense of what that is, and we're hoping there might be others that the old timers miss as well, that a series of stacked structures running through there. The strike length is going off the strike length of the historic occurrences, which is partly related to outcrop, and how far it continues after that as it heads under cover and through another hill off to the north and off to the south. That remains to be seen. But with a sort of 200 metre plus strike length to begin with, an open down dip, we've got a lot to get going on with. But obviously, they had mineralisation at either end, so it does continue. It doesn't stop. So we just need to open that up.
I might just add to that, Darren, just a mental note. You actually drove all the way on an existing track to the top of the lithocap, and we've got photos of you up there. So there is actually a road all the way up there. So permitting of that will be a lot simpler than some of the other areas.
You now have Union Carbide's 1958 assay sheets and hole locations. Mapping those onto the modern open pit footprint, how far off the high-grade core were Union Carbide's holes? And is OD6 planned maiden drilling program targeting that untested centre directly or building from the known southern grades outwards?
Around about 10 to 20 metres to the high-grade section from where the Union Carbide drilling was. Union Carbide drilling was on a track, basically, before the pit was put in. The bottom of the pit is nice and flat. We can get a drill rig in and target those high grades. We can even drill up dip if we can anchor a drill rig into the end face as well and drill up dip from there. So, 10, 20 meters maybe as to the exposed very high grade center of the pit. They were really right at the edge of the ore body, actually, to tell the truth. So we've got a number of different high grade spots that we're going to test in there. So yes, we're going to drill, obviously target the high grade, but our first drill program that permanent on here is the drill to results program. It's getting above the open pit, it's getting below the open pit, down the slope, and along the existing track and within the open pit to essentially punch in 30 to 60 meter holes to understand the extents of that system. There won't be exploration holes, there'll be resource drilling holes. The scale of the ore body already dictates that.
Thanks, Darren. The Horseshoe Jumbo Corridor was emphasised in satellite hyperspectral work. What's the structural and alterational evidence that links them into a single mineralising event versus two separate occurrences? And does the 70,000 square metre lithocap sit above a single causative intrusion at depth?
Okay, so yeah, it was actually it was a NASA airborne survey, so it's flown from a plane, not a satellite for the hyperspectral work. It was done all over Nevada, and it's excellent data. We've been on the ground to field check the alteration, and it is essentially silicified cap in that area, not the lithocap, but the silicified cap into North Horseshoe. So we anticipate the mineralization that we see heading into the side of the hill at Horseshoe will continue in that direction. It's the same orientation as the main feeder structures that we've observed in the pit. So we've got every chance that's going to continue. We've got the near surface alteration footprint. Will it be different high-grade zones linked together, or will it be one continuous zone? We won't know that until we drill testing. Right? It could go all the way to North Horseshoe and on towards Jumbo. In and around the lithocaps, a number of felsic intrusions. They're dikes mainly, but they come off a causative intrusion somewhere. It certainly appears that lithocap is ground zero for heat flow in that area. So we believe that there will be a causative intrusion underneath it, but that's postulated geologically, of course. And until we get some drilling and start to test that, we'll see. But it's a very, very large epithermal footprint.
And just on that, this might be the last question for you, Darren, before we go to Brett for some more. Given Nevada hosts some of the world's most substantial gold deposits and Quinn is an epithermal system, do you consider the project to be prospective for gold?
Ah, great that somebody's asked that question. Yes, Nevada is one of the world's great gold provinces. The Carlin Trend, the Battle Mountain Eureka Trend, between them hosts hundreds of millions of ounces of gold. They were discovered from the 1960s. Anglo-Gold Ashanti is looking to develop over 14 million ounce new epithermal discovery down in the BT area. There isn't a lot of reports of historic gold here. But the work that was done here was done before the recognition of Carlin-style systems. The Pogonite limestone, which is our limestone, is a key stratigraphic control also up in the Battle Mountain, Eureka Trend, and Carlin-style systems elsewhere. The AngloGold Ashanti BT mine used to be a fluorspar mine. Right, it was the Daisy mine. It's off to one side from the main fluorspar thing. Epithermal systems come in all kinds of forms. So we haven't talked about it so much in markets because we don't have any evidence to really support it. But with all the samples that we're collecting at the moment, we're making sure we've got assay for gold as well, and then we'll see. But it's an epithermal system of substantial scale that no one's really looked at, and this is the amazing opportunity that Nevada presents. That it's unlike Australia or Western Australia, where people can stake very large tracts of land. People have to stake by hammering stakes in the ground. So the big companies generally consolidate prospectors' ground that don't go and stake themselves and don't go and lock up ground. So this area hasn't had a decent look at since the Carlin styles were discovered in the 1960s. So therein is an opportunity for us. An epithermal system that runs at least 8 kilometers, if not further, is quite a substantial epithermal system. So I'm a gold bug. I'm a gold exploration geologist, and I sure as hell hope that we'll get some gold in there. That's a forward-looking statement, of course, Lucas.
I can tell you're excited. DD is described as nearing completion. What specific items remain, and on what timeline does OD6 formally exercise the acquisition? With Big Jim now adding a third system, has the vendor approached OD6 to renegotiate the acquisition consideration or royalty terms, or is it locked in as per the original structure?
So let's answer the last question. It's locked in. There's been no request for any renegotiation or anything else, and neither would we entertain it. So we've got a good relationship with Don and Thomas and the guys that were there. And it's probably worth noting Don's actually had other ASX deals done as well, 49 Metals. What was the other one? Black Bear or something like that, big as well. Yeah. So he's not
used
just
to be
a small.
now called Black Bear.
Yeah. So he's not just a small-time prospector. He's actually probably worth a bit of money. So from that point of view, no, it's all going to well. So in terms of, we've really ticked off all the geology stuff. We've now ticked off the metallurgy. Those historic reports have actually been a little treasure trove of really great information that really accelerates our whole thinking process to that now. So there's nothing really holding us out exercising the option now if we wanted to. The only thing we're doing is just doing the final checks on a few last little bits and pieces. But look, in the coming weeks or months, we'll no doubt exercise that option and get on with it.
Evian Group announced the CARP project acquisition on the 12th of May, a direct ASX listed competitor in Nevada, Fluorspar. How does OD6 differentiate against Evian Group on a project by project basis? And does CARP's existence change OD6's optionality?
Look, so we were well aware of the CARP project. As I've mentioned earlier, we've looked at virtually all US projects that can have fluorspar in the area. We had an opportunity there. We didn't see that we could get to those 5 million tons plus 30% grade and all those type of things. So look, good on the guys. They're going to take a kick at it, and I hope wish them all good success on finding something out there. There's 400,000 tons of demand currently in the US, and that's growing. So no doubt you could have 3 or 4 players in the US. And look, I think in the grand scheme of things, and I'll probably wrap it up a bit later with some similar comments. The US virtually offshored everything to China and other places around the world. Now they're wanting to onshore. So it's the right time, the right place. There's plenty of room for lots of people. If we see other good projects and we think that they should belong in our stable, then we'll jump on those opportunities and continue to add to our fluorspar story in the US.
Julie Bishop has been on board to OD6, and given her previous political positions in connection to the US government, has there been any progress towards the US government connection to OD6? I suppose this is a question that you've kind of covered earlier on.
Yeah, so we've already Julie's already introduced us into the Fast 41 process, so that's occurred. She's speaking obviously to the new ambassadors. There's a whole heap of other people that we have lined up, but we need to make sure the timing's right on these type of things. You don't want to go into a meeting and use your political capital to say, "Hey, we're an Australian company. We've got something. We want to go there with a real direct ask and say." We've got something. This is what we need from you guys. We'd really like your assistance on whatever XYZ, or we'd like a grant, or we want to accelerate our permitting program. So a lot of people you can waste a lot of political capital and not get a second meeting if you don't get it right first. And that will include things like Exim Bank and others. So yes, Julie's out there. She's doing a good job for us, and she's also we've got a great deal of urgency to get in there, but she's also just saying right time and hit them in the right place as well.
Receiving the Union Carbide data is a big win. Were you aware of the existence of this data when you made the acquisition?
So we haven't had the acquisition yet, but no, the answer is no. So we didn't know about it at the time. We've continued to look for data sources, and someone pointed us in the right direction. Interesting enough, the data source was really a whole heap of ex-Union Carbide stuff in sea containers that a guy did during COVID era. So he was scanning all those documents and now tries to sell them to lots of people around the world or around the US. So no, we weren't aware.
Okay, well, thanks very much to both Brett and Darren. That brings us to the end of the Q&A session. As always, if you have any more questions, feel free to email them to us at info@corporatestorytime.com. Before we do close, Brett or Darren, have you got any final comments you'd like to share?
Darren, you might want to go first and I'll go second.
This is an outstanding, exceptional project that every step that we've looked at in the short period that we've owned it, it just looks better and better each time. Each time we go back, each time we find something new like Big Jim, or we're prospecting elsewhere in the region, or we're getting that asset results, and that doesn't come along that often in exploration. You get a lot of early sort of sniffs, and then things, you test them, you test the hypothesis, as scientists should do, test the hypothesis, and the hypothesis gets refuted. And so you kind of have to turn around and move on. Whereas each little test that we're doing here seems to be stepping in the right direction. And somebody asked me what an existential threat to the project looks like, in terms of another discovery from somebody else. I think we are the existential threat. I think that our project is stacking up against major projects around the world, like Tavan and stuff that are looking at being developed. And yeah, it's got the grade, it's got the mineralogy, it's got the location. It's not stuck on the edge of the Arctic Circle. It's almost practically on a highway, right? And we're very lucky and pleased to have it.
Great, thanks for that, Darren. I suppose just for me wrapping up, again, thanks to all the shareholders that have been backing the company. There's still plenty of things to run. If you look at it from a Tavan point of view, we're still only a quarter or a fifth, not even that, of their market cap. So we've got plenty of opportunity to run even further. I think I've said in the past, I shouldn't say these things sometimes, but I really see this project being 50 cents by the time we get through the next couple of little bits, which is 150 million market cap, which is still nowhere near where Tavan is at the moment. We've still got to do a bit more work and catch up to some of those guys, but we'll get that done. I suppose the thematic is perfect in terms of obviously China being now a net importer, the US trying to re-onshore everything, lots of money being thrown into the US as well. So from a thematic point of view, we're just in the right spot at the right point in time. It's a great project. So Donald Trump being in power obviously has his pros and cons, but from our point of view, he's actually doing a good thing for getting the US, make America great again. So we can be part of that, and shareholders can participate all the way through as well. So look, right time, right place, right grade, right size. Have the ability to take over what's currently imported into America. So the project is good.